Well, Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for making time for us.
Welcome.
Certainly no shortage of news out here. Let's begin with health care. Is repealing and replacing Obamacare officially dead or in a desperate need of a reboot?
I think I'd go for the latter. I'm hoping that that's the case. Look, this law is failing. That's the problem. It's not as if the status quo is acceptable and we can just live with this. This law is in a tailspin right now. You have had premiums double. You have insurers pulling out of markets all over the country. 4 out of 10 counties in America are down to 1 insurer left. That's a monopoly. It's not even a choice. There's a whole bunch of counties in America where there are no options left, so people can't even find a health care plan. So really, just the status quo is unacceptable. My hope is that the Senate gets it right. We had our own speed bump here in the House, and we had a pause, and then we figured it out. We talked to each other. We worked out our differences. So that's what I'm encouraging the Senate to do, work out their differences. I know they're all going down to the White House today to have a working lunch with the president. So hopefully the Senate can work this out and get this done. And my whole point is, if you first don't succeed, just keep going at it, keep working the problem. That's hopefully what they'll do.
So have you come up with a plan B with Senator McConnell?
Well, no, he's still on plan A, which is to see if he can get this done. So I'm hoping that they can do that. They've given themselves a little more time. I'm hoping that that's the case. And we'll stay here and wait in session to see if they can do that.
Do you support repeal it now, try to replace it later?
Well, they don't have the votes for that. So we passed that in 2005. Here's the problem. This law is so bad, it's collapsing. It's basically doing so much harm to families and to businesses that we really need to replace it with something better. If we can repeal it and then replace it, fine. But what matters is that we recognize the fact that the law is in a tailspin, that it's collapsing, it's hurting families, it's hurting individuals, and we've got to replace it with something that works. And that's what we've done here in the House. We've already actually passed a bill in the House that I think will work really well for Wisconsin. It will get us back into the business of having a high-risk pool with federal financing to cover people with catastrophic illnesses, and that will help dramatically reduce premiums for everybody else in the individual market in Wisconsin, and it'll bring more health care plans into the state. We want more choice, more competition, more insurers competing against each other for our business so that we can have better prices, better premiums. When you have a monopoly, which is what Obamacare is producing, you don't get better quality and you don't get lower prices.
Do you get lower deductibles? I mean, the deductibles is what is hurting folks.
It is what's hurting people. So
you're dealing with
what the House bill does is it says let people buy what they want. Don't force them to buy insurance coverage they don't want or need, and let them vary their deductibles, but also give people health savings accounts to pay for their out-of-pocket expenses, their under-deductible expenses, so they can save tax-free for it. So we have good solutions to deal with all these real problems. The problem is Obamacare is failing. So I just don't think accepting the status quo is a solution, and that's why I'm hopeful the Senate just keeps at it.
All right. So I know you've had telephone town halls, you've had employee town halls, taken some heat for not having public town halls, but are you ready for an iPad town hall?
Sure.
Okay.
Look, here's the point. I'm looking for as many creative ways as I can to meet with constituents. As you may know, there are groups from out of state, out of the district, pledging to come and disrupt these town halls. What I'm looking for is a way to have a civil dialogue with constituents, no matter what their opinions and views are. But putting the security concerns aside, having protesters bust in from out of the district to disrupt town hall meetings does not create a civil dialogue with your constituents. So that's why I'm doing office hours. That's why I'm answering phones, mail. You can email me if you want to. That's why I'm doing business town hall. So I'm looking for as many creative things as I can.
Here's one of them. All right, here's Marianne. Just hit the play button.
I was saved by having Obamacare. I developed a blood clot, had pulmonary embolisms, and if I had not had Obamacare, I would have died. And how can he not support to help those who need it the most?
That's the first one.
Okay, so I completely agree. The point is people need affordable insurance coverage. She's saying that she had coverage and it saved her life. That's what we want. We want coverage for everyone, but particularly people with high healthcare costs, high healthcare problems, catastrophic illnesses. And we think there's a better way to do it than Obamacare, which is not working. And look at what Obamacare is doing. We've had premiums double since Obamacare came in place. And you mentioned all the skyrocketing deductibles, but more importantly, people are losing their choices. The insurance market is collapsing. Blue Cross Blue Shield, which is one of our biggest health insurers in Wisconsin, has pulled out of Wisconsin now. So the status quo doesn't work. That's why we're saying we can do something better. So for a person with a catastrophic illness like she has, That's why I'm saying let's have federal financing of state risk pools to guarantee a person with a catastrophic illness gets coverage that's affordable so they don't go bankrupt if they get sick. But also, by having risk pools cover those catastrophic illnesses, the rest of insurance for everybody else doesn't have to cover those costs. And what happens is you dramatically lower the price and the premiums and the deductible for everybody else. That's what we're proposing. And we're also proposing to give people a tax credit to go buy that health insurance with health savings accounts. So we actually think we're replacing Obamacare with something better that works for everybody, but especially and particularly people with a healthcare problem like that.
President Trump says, let Obamacare fail.
It is failing.
Is it really an option, though, to let it fail without doing something?
If we don't do something, then it will fail. That's the point I'm trying to make, which is doing nothing, which obviously if we can't pass a bill out of the Senate, then nothing happens, and that means the catastrophe continues in Obamacare.
Is he doing all he can do, do you think, the president, to make this bill pass or to get it
Yeah, I think he is actually. He's engaged.
Fully invested?
He's engaged. I talked to him twice yesterday about this. He is engaged more on this issue than I've seen any president engage in any particular issue with members of Congress. He speaks with members constantly trying to get this done. The frustrating thing for us in passing this bill, particularly here in the House, is we have to write it in accordance with Senate rules. And that means we can't put all of the kinds of reforms that we would like to see in this particular bill because of Senate rules. That's why we're passing these other bills. We passed a bill called Association Health Plans. Let a small business person bulk buy their health insurance in their national trade association. Let a farmer buy his or her health insurance to the National Farm Bureau plan to get the bulk buying power of all farmers in America. That's a reform we think is really good. It really helps, but you can't put it in this bill because of the Senate rules. So there's a lot of frustration about those things.
Here's Sandy.
Hey, this is cool. Thanks for doing this, actually. Hang on, where's your vote? Hang on. Yeah, it's right here.
Their programs are getting cut. Their Medicaid is getting cut. Their parents don't know what to do anymore.
So she's saying that
she's talking about disabled in Medicaid.
Yeah, and they're depending on Medicaid.
Yeah. So we don't cut Medicaid. We actually grow Medicaid on into the future. But what we do is we give the state control of the Medicaid program. You have to remember, Wisconsin has a different healthcare network and system than, say, New York or California. Yet the government puts the same rules on the way states run Medicaid. So we want to give the state better flexibility on how to run Medicaid. And she's talking in particular about disabled people on Medicaid. We set a separate category in the block grant for Medicaid for age and disabled, for people who are institutionalized, people who have disabilities, people who are in like nursing homes. And we put a separate funding stream for that, and we give it extra money. They have an increase in funding relative to all the rest of Medicaid. So we set those aside. It's about $80 billion for just this category of Medicaid patients, so the state can focus on managing those resources even better. So I fundamentally believe that we can make Medicaid a better program, better run, with the kind of stability and the funding and the flexibility that we're going to give Wisconsin to run this program. You have to remember, Charles, there are a lot of people in the healthcare community, doctors in particular, that won't even take Medicaid patients anymore. They lose money. In Wisconsin, providers get on average about 60 cents on the dollar from Medicaid. That means when they see a person coming through the door with Medicaid, they know that they're going to lose money on that person. So in many cases, doctors won't even take a Medicaid patient. That doesn't work. What good is a healthcare program if you can't get access to the healthcare? That is why we think by giving Wisconsin better control over the Medicaid population to work for Wisconsinites, predictable funding, more resources for aged and disabled people, we can have a better program.
Congresswoman Pelosi says she's offering you a hand to help out, a hand of friendship. Can the Democrats make this deal?
Yeah, well, I'll take her hand of friendship any day. Nancy and I know each other very well. We work together on some things. Here's what I have not yet seen from the Democrats. I have not yet seen any willingness from the Democrats to work on making a private health care system work. What they really want is a single-payer, government-run health care system. So I have not seen any attempt or any willingness from them to replace Obamacare with a system that works, other than the fact that they want to go to a government-run healthcare. I'm talking about government-run for everybody, not just certain people. They want the government running healthcare for all people, and I think that would be a huge disaster.
All right, let me talk about some other issues. You met with Foxconn to bring 10,000 jobs to Wisconsin. Racine County, is that their number one choice?
Well, I'm not going to speak for Foxconn, only that we are having a great dialogue. The governor's leading this, and I'm participating in these conversations with Foxconn executives. We would love to have Foxconn come to Wisconsin. This could be Huge game changer for the southeastern Wisconsin economy. But I'll defer to the governor as far as any announcements, but we're really hopeful that this could happen.
What's it going to take to close the deal?
Well, I'd leave it to the governor on that one.
All right. So there have been some legislative wins. What's the most significant?
Get my card out. So just this year, you can tell how old I'm getting. I had to hold this out from me. First of all, we've done a lot in just the first 6 months. We have passed tools to combat human trafficking, the biggest military pay raise in 8 years, the biggest increase in border security in a decade. We overhauled the Veterans Administration. That's pretty important. Remember we had, TOMA, or we had all these waiting lists? We had to overhaul the way the Veterans Administration worked. We've done that. That's now in law. In the House, we passed a replacement of Dodd-Frank, which is really strangling community banks and credit. We've passed important immigration enforcement laws. We've done 14 congressional review acts, which are regulatory relief, that brings regulatory relief to businesses so that they can grow. We in the House have repealed Obamacare. There's so many other things that we've done. I'd say that's going to help us right now, the opioid epidemic. This is a serious problem in Wisconsin. It's nationwide. We passed opioid reform legislation, but also funding of that reform legislation. And those resources are now getting into our communities, into the county level in the states to help combat opioid. So I think there's a lot of things that we've done. One of the deals that I think is important, I hear this from Wisconsin employers a lot, is the skills gap. Mm-hmm. I was at Seneca Foods in Janesville the other day, where they can fresh vegetables. They've got 43 openings. They can't hire, they can't find people to take these jobs. Good wages, good starting wages, benefits, 401k, healthcare. So I can name all these employers that are saying we need people. So we have a skills gap. We've got able-bodied adults in Wisconsin who aren't even being counted in the unemployment statistics anymore, who don't have the skills they need to get a good job. So we've got jobs being offered. We've got to close that skills gap. So a month ago, we passed landmark skills training reform, overhauling our entire career and technical education system to get those skills training into our communities. I think that's really, really important. I think that's one of the bigger things that we've done this year. We're now on our second installment as well of giving our military more resources. We've got a problem with our military readiness, and we are now on round 2 of helping our military. So those are the things we've done in the first 6 months.
I'm going to try to get 2 more questions in. Wisconsin needs money for roads and transportation. Will they get an infrastructure bill this year?
Yeah, we will do infrastructure. It may go into the first of the year, right. But we passed a 5-year highway bill increasing roads by 10% at the federal level. I know there's a debate at the state level about that budget, right. But last year I negotiated a highway bill for 5 years with a 10% increase in highway spending. So that's now taking place. We're now going to round 2 of infrastructure, which is more than just roads and spending. It's airports, it's pipelines, it's grid, it's power lines. So we're going to be doing a bunch of infrastructure bills between now and into the winter.
President Trump has been in office now 6 months. Do you think you're doing enough to hold him accountable?
Everybody asks that. So the funny thing I find about this is we've got an investigation in the House, we've got an investigation in the Senate, you've got a special counsel, but we're also working on all these other things. And I find that the coverage is sort of wall to wall, Russia, Russia, Russia. And what I think is frustrating, that people think that that's all we do is investigations and hearings, when we are doing those things to keep any administration accountable and to find out basically what Russia did. I mean, Vladimir Putin is not a good guy. Vladimir Putin is trying to undermine and delegitimize democracy around the world, and in particular in America. So it's our job in Congress to uncover just what this guy is up to stop it from happening again and help our allies stop it as well. But at the same time, with all this Russia coverage, I think it's important to note that we're doing all these other things, focusing on the concerns of our constituents, focusing on issues that matter to people, that they care about. Those are the things we're worried about. Skills gap, the economy, opening up our energy resources for jobs and economic growth, making sure that our military gets what they need so they can do their job. So the point I try to make to people is we can walk and chew gum at the same time.